because I've recognized that that's actually when it is recording for sure. And here we are for another episode of Dualistic Unity Raw on a Sunday. I am looking forward to this one. I just want to say hi to everyone who could join us today live, as well as everyone who couldn't. It's great to know that you're out there doing your thing and that you are not, in fact, trying to lean on us while you are here participating in the conversation. I truly, truly have to say that by now, by this far in the podcast, you must be getting that it's all on you. You must be coming to the realization that while Andrew and I might be pleasant to talk to and we're always happy to be here, the fact is that you are enough on your own. You don't need us. You don't need the podcast. You don't need Dualistic Unity. You are the point. You are the world. And the fact that you are out there is all we need in terms of a community. We don't need to come together. We need to be whole in ourselves. And then we'll just fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this. Everything we're doing. It's how I think we're able to have so many conversations and talk and just be as communicative and doing stuff as often as we do, because we know that it's not on us. Your journey is not on us. And so there's a weight. Like, you see it so often with people saying, like, you need them, like, and not everyone even says it explicitly necessarily, but there's kind of an undertone of, you need me, especially, the whole, like, channelers and all that stuff, and any sort of spiritual guru. Like, I watched that Wild Wild Country documentary recently. I actually didn't finish it. I think I still have like 2 episodes, 2 out of the 6 episodes left, so there's like a third of it that I haven't seen. But it's interesting how they just, the one at the top, like, starts with a B. I forget his name, but the main guy, Osho, he went by is like another nickname for him, like, thinks that people need him. And so with that comes a massive weight. And it's like they don't even realize it necessarily, because they think they're deriving so much benefit from getting the validation of people. But it's just another means of that sort of validation that they're getting from people relying upon them and them being willing to be the crutch. And then they make it sort of this warrior mentality, like, I'm bearing all of this weight, I'm bearing the weight of the world. And that sounds so exhausting. And I think that's why, again, that's why we can do this so often. And people comment, like, you guys talk a lot, you live stream a lot, you do a lot of episodes. Like, we film 5 episodes a week on top of 5-6 group chats a week, not including the free one. So 7 group chats a week. So it's like, we're putting so much out and we don't run out of things to say. We continue to have the conversation because we're not holding that weight. That's the beauty of it. And this goes back to what we were talking about last week, like, recognizing the benefits to this conversation versus thinking that having the conversation and being able to talk about it is the benefit itself. Like, where are your priorities? Do your priorities lie in the experience that you're having moment to moment? Because that's all there is this moment right now. Where does your experience lie? And so this gets into, and I'll pass it back to Ray in a sec, but I was having a conversation with someone this past weekend about the recognition that there's no right way to have this conversation, to recognize, to be free. Essentially, it always just comes down to your moment to moment experience. And so if you're getting stressed thinking that you did something wrong, or, oh, I got caught up in this, oh, I was judging myself, and then you're judging yourself for judging yourself, then it's not prioritizing the experience that you're having in the moment, right? If you're judging yourself for or getting caught and thinking there's a right way and you're not doing it, it's like, it's always just, what degree of freedom are you experiencing here and now? And the thing is that even not feeling like you're experiencing freedom isn't wrong. It's not like the quote unquote wrong way of doing this. Because if you get caught in that, then when you're not experiencing it, you're going to feel tension, you're going to feel stress, and that's just going to spiral you even more. And so it's got to be the prioritization of your experience here and now, which doesn't mean a good experience. It just means how much concern and stress you have about whatever fucking experience you're going through. And as that drops, as as the concern, the thought that there's a right way to experience life, as that drops, it's just the way it's being experienced. And then there's a little bit less stress, there's a little bit less tension, a little bit more freedom. And then you're able to handle kind of anything that gets thrown at you. You're not as fragile and only able to experience when things are feeling good. And then as things start to not feel as great, you kind of spiral. So anyway, coming back to what I was started that with our reliance upon, we don't rely upon anything from you to validate us. And so we know that the responsibility for you and your experience is on you. We're just here having a conversation. We're just here chatting, being free in ourselves, letting go of things ourselves, dealing with going through shit ourselves, and letting go of the idea that anything about us is wrong as we go through it. And so there's a lightness that comes with that recognition of not bearing the weight of the world on your shoulders, despite coming closer to recognizing the reality of what you are. It doesn't mean anything. Like recognizing that you're everything doesn't mean that it comes with a set of rules and like a new way to experience. Like you've always been everything. You're being it right now. You're doing everything right now. If you think that it's a heavy thing, it's because you're getting caught in thinking that that means something, and it's a conceptual idea. It's not really the reality of what's happening.
Well said. Absolutely. My computer is processing in the background, so I do apologize if there's a bit of a hum, but I do want to get into some announcements quickly if we can. I also have some stuff I'd like to go off about regarding what we were just saying. Specifically, though, I want to throw this out there to the community because I know we have a large community and there are a lot of different skills out there in the community. At the moment, Andrew and myself and Amanda, we're sitting in a position where we recognize that we actually have quite a bit of an offering with Dualistic Unity in terms of advertising space. We looked at the episodes the other day. We looked at how many potential ad spots there are in the episodes. And the reason I'm telling everybody this is because we want to tell you exactly how it is the podcast is growing. I mean, largely, we've been continuing on through the support of our Patreon members, and we are incredibly grateful for that. We also have some merch, but we generally don't try to focus on selling that. We have some workshops that you can get, but they're as inexpensive as possible. And so we really are working towards a point where we can get advertisers to sponsor the podcast and pay for resources for the community and pay for us to do the things that we've been talking about in terms of expanding this discussion and helping others in terms of, I guess, what we were saying, normalizing altruism. We just want to get in everybody's face and just put a lot of ridiculous amounts of money into things that are just altruistic for the sake of doing it, because it's about the mentality shift, not necessarily about the money. Anyway, we have a lot of advertising space, and frankly, we have no time or interest in trying to pursue companies to invest in that advertising space. And so at the moment, what we decided is we put a job up on LinkedIn. You can check us out on LinkedIn. I'll put the QR code on the screen here in a second. And if you would like, this is a commission only position, which means that you would be doing the work in your own time in the same way that Andrew and myself have done for over a year and a half, in the same way that Amanda is currently doing, and regardless of her job and all of the work that she does alternatively in the world to survive, she's been just volunteering as much time as she can, because ultimately we believe that this is going to continue to grow because of you, because of people like you, because there is so much interest in just not suffering so much at the end of the day, or understanding why we're suffering, understanding who we are, and recognizing that we're so invested in this idea of ourselves that it's causing all kinds of consequence. It is an important conversation, I guess, to have if you are willing to have it. That said, we're not trying to sell advertising space. So if you would like to sell advertising space for us, we are offering a commission-only position at the moment. That commission-only position is giving a very healthy percentage with lots of bonuses based on performance and whatnot. We just want somebody who's part of the team. You don't necessarily have to have a lot of sales experience, but you should be chatty. You should be passionate. You should be enthusiastic in the same way that we are. And we will make sure that you're taken care of. And then as Dualistic Unity starts to grow, there will be further opportunities. And so if you are a salesperson, if this is something you believe in, if you are interested in just doing some of the legwork, and by that I mean, frankly, doing some research, checking out a couple other podcasts, listening to who their sponsors are, contacting those sponsors and going, hey, have you considered Dualistic Unity, and telling them about our community? And that's really all it is. You talk to them, they buy a spot on the podcast, you make a commission, the community continues to make some more resources, and we all grow together as we get closer and closer to putting up that goddamn billboard in Times Square. Because this is definitely something that we want to do. And you can make that happen. You can help make that happen for us. And you can be a part of this team as it grows, because we are going to continue to expand. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If it's something you're interested in, please get in touch with me. You can do so through the website in the contact form. You can do so through social media. You can do so through the Discord. Just let us know that you're interested, and then we'll arrange a time to chat with you and see what it is you can bring to the table. And just know that we really appreciate it. While this is all whatever time you can put in right now, later on, it'll be a full-time thing as long as this just continues to grow, which is really on us.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Even just our chats we've been having, Dualistic Unity business meetings in the last week are incredibly exciting. Just to think how much has been built and how much is happening and how much everyone involved in it, like anyone who listens to it, anyone involved in Patreon, like you're as much Dualistic Unity as we are. And it's exciting because it's not even a thing. It's just like uh I like conversation at most, but it's not even that. Again, never what you think. And that's the funniest part about this conversation is the recognition that the thing you think something is isn't the thing that it is. And so the explanation of dualistic unity isn't what dualistic unity is. And so it's always that paradoxical bit, which is funny, but it's exciting because there's there's a lot of resources out there, a lot of things out there, and the more that come into our hands, like the more dope shit we can do. Because we've said it a number of times, like our income is being capped at not a very high number. And outside of that, we just want to do shit because that's what we want to do. Like I enjoy doing like my favorite things to do, like making videos, doing the podcast, talking, having this conversation essentially. And so we're just going to find more ways to do that. Like that's what I would want to spend my money on anyway. And so it makes sense that, we make enough to survive and live and, be able to pay rent and all that stuff and buy food. But on top of that, it's like the things we enjoy doing aren't buying shit. It's having this conversation and like doing things to get it out there, to get it in front of more people. And so something like that billboard in the middle of Times Square, in the middle of Manhattan, I am you, you are God, we are one, over and over and over and over with no branding whatsoever. Like, how much of a fucking loop is that going to send people for? That is going to be, so dope. And it's not like that far away, as Ray was saying, with in terms of advertising and whatnot on the podcast. Like, we have enough potential there for if things started getting filled quickly. We got some people, some sales employees involved who started filling some of those ad slots. Like I like that banner a lot. That is dope. Who start filling those ad slots, then that may happen, much, much sooner than you think, like well within a year. And to have that there, like that would just be incredible in the middle of I love New York City. I love Manhattan, but it's arguably the most egotistical place in the world. And just to have that right in the middle of it, surrounded by just spammy marketers trying to sell you shit with nothing being sold, just this recognition. I'm you, you are God, we are one, over and over and over and over for like months. And it's paid for. So it's not like it's getting taken down. Like someone's getting the money for that. And it's just words. It's what, like 12 words or something. And like, oh gosh, it would just be incredible. And so on top of that, I know Ray has been thinking of ideas for 20 years. And so when the resources are there, it's going to be nuts because we have no stop. There's no reason. And the people with resources right now, like there's a lot of people doing a lot of dope shit. Like look at Mr. Beast, for example. He's like cured 1,000 people of blindness. That's like an incredible thing to use money for, to use resources for. And so it's just going to be that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And just doing it because we're freeing ourselves. We're holding ourselves. We don't need anything anything else. It's like, all right, there's some extra stuff. Let's go do some shit with it. Let's go help some people out who wouldn't maybe be able to get help alternatively. So it's yeah, the future is bright for for everything that's going on here, and I'm definitely feeling a momentum pull that we felt in the past with the podcast, blowing up and whatnot. But then in terms of all the things we can do with, as the resources start coming in, it's like it's a lot more than just doing a podcast every week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you bring up Mr. Beast because I was looking at a video of his the other day. He was doing an interview and he was saying that based on what he knows just about content creation, he could create a YouTube channel right now, never put his face on it, never, promote it from any of his channels, and get to 1 million subscribers or 10 million subscribers within 6 months. He's like, it's just knowledge. It's just understanding how to basically, appeal to what people want. And so while he's doing great things with it in terms of, again, helping blind people and deaf people, he's taking advantage of our current mentality to get resources. And what we're trying to do is to take advantage of the system that is created by this mentality, which would be all the corporations offering sponsorship money to our advertisements. So that way we can create a discussion that changes the mentality. See, that's the thing, is like Mr. Beast is really clever. Like, he's really clever. Beast Burgers, that's a fantastic idea. Like, half the stuff that he's been doing in terms of business is amazing. But while he's great at making money, he's not changing the common dialogue very much. And if he is, he's changing it in terms of just giving away a shit ton of money, which glorifies money at the end of the day. And so there is this slight negative consequence to the way that he is promoting this. And I would very much like to be able to create something that continues to generate revenue, where we can invest in the changing mentality. It's not just about like, here's a bunch of cash, but hey, we've noticed how hard you've been working in the world, and we have an alternative in terms of a place for you to go and live, or a place for you to work, or a job that you can have in a community that actually wants to connect with you. Like, we want to create an alternative to the system, which is very much based on just money and control, right? And that alternative is just you being yourself without having to rely on that system, without passing responsibility to that system, without having to give up your quote unquote sovereignty to that system, wherein we are all the same being working together collectively because we recognize that we're all in this together. It's not as hard as it sounds. It's just they can't be done by focusing on the external. And that's where everybody goes wrong. Oh, we got to create communes. We got to create urban gardens. It's like, yeah, but if you don't address the mentality, if you don't start to change yourself, if you don't change how you see everything and how you talk about everything and everything that you interpret in the world based on a divisive mindset into something that is less divisive, if you don't do that, the ripples that you're making won't spread. It'll just be a building with a good intention that people walk by and can't appreciate because their mindset hasn't changed. So there has to be more to it than just spreading out the money. There has to be more to it than just giving people cash. Because while that's great for a little while, it doesn't make them feel less alone. It doesn't make them feel more connected to others or themselves. It doesn't get them out of the illusion in their head that they're running from, and the reason they're probably spending money they don't have on shit they don't need. Like, there are so many things to address, and it comes down to more than just becoming super popular and making lots of coins so you can give it to people. There are things we can do, regardless of what every rich billionaire asshole seems to convince themselves. Like, oh, not all the money, no matter how much money I have, it's not going to make it 10. It's like, try. Like, you're not smart enough? Like, put some resources together. Better yet, talk to people who are smarter than you. Ask them. Come up with something, but try. Actually try, but nobody really wants to try outside of feeling better about, well, I'm saving the world. There's no world to save. There's just you to change. And all we want to do is facilitate your change. We want to make it easier for you to change without so much pushing and pulling.
Yeah, and I hear that a lot with the shifts and kind of the excuses for someone like Jeff Bezos. And it's not to say that creating jobs with a company isn't a semi beneficial thing, but to your point, it's all on the surface. It's all such shallow surface level shit. It's like, oh, more jobs is good. It's not like a recognition of the entirety of the system that's going on, the entire of the mentality that is facilitating all of this, the mentality that everything that we do is an expression of. And so all of that, like, the creation of jobs and that sort of excuse for someone making a bunch of money and benefiting society in that way. It's looking at the leaves on the tree. It's not looking at the trunk. It's not looking at the roots. It's not looking at where it's coming from. And money, like X amount of money, I understand that for someone in extreme poverty and below the living wage, like money makes a massive difference. It absolutely does. But there is still the mentality still comes with them. There's no shift in the mentality. And that number that where money makes a difference in someone's well-being, someone's happiness, isn't an incredibly high number. Like there are tons and tons of people who are suffering a ton, who are above that line. And so adding money to that doesn't shift it. But that's where we focus. We're like, oh, just more money, and then better, and then happier, and then feeling more free. And that's it. And it's like, yes, to a degree, but that number is a lot smaller than most people think. And then it isn't. It's not about that. But there's no certainty in that. There's no control in that recognition that you can't just throw money at something and make better. More money, better, help, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's not about that. There is an underlying mentality that is where our focus lies. So it's not about the surface level stuff. It's not about the things that the shifts that all the politicians, all the economists, all the billionaires are looking at. Because it's there's more control and certainty and comfort in that, in just having a nice little equation and, oh, do this, get this, do this, get this response. We're talking about uncertainty. We're talking about the experience of freedom. We're talking about the recognition that you don't know what the answer to all of this is. But we're going to find out through shifting ourselves, through recognizing in ourself where all of the chains come from, where all of the things holding us back come from. And then things like, self-sustaining societies and communes and stuff, they're expressions of that mentality. But it's not about that. Like that whole commune idea, whatever, might not be what ends up happening. It's just an idea that seems to make sense from a certain mentality. But as the mentality shifts, there might be an entirely different way of living, an entirely different society that we start to realize makes a lot more sense. So we don't know what that is. But when you talk to people about that, when you bring up, some of the issues with our current mentality and some of the things maybe we could improve in our society, immediately people are like, well, what's your answer? What's your answer? And it's that mentality that's shifting, the need for the certainty, the need to get the answer and just follow that. It's like there's no sensitivity in that. It's like the whole idea of right and wrong, good and bad. It's like there is no right and wrong. There is no good and bad. And as you hold on to the idea of what's right or what's wrong, you're not paying as much attention to reality. You're not being as sensitive to the moment. How many times do we go through situations where it's like, oh, I was just trying to do the right thing, and you fuck something up super bad, or you totally miss something, or you did the opposite of what you were trying to do because you maintained an idea of the right thing to do, and you were paying attention to that idea as opposed to paying attention to reality. We're paying attention to reality. We're not paying attention to coming up with some fucking idea that sounds great, like a seventh grade student council representative who's trying to run for student council, coming up with all these ideas that they know damn well that aren't going to go through, but they sound real good, so they get votes. We saw it with Biden with the whole debt forgiveness thing. That just blew up because it was like illegal the whole time, but came up right before election. It worked super well. Oh, fell apart. Oh, surprise, surprise. Doesn't matter. Going to come up with another thing before the next election. And it's just because it gives someone that certainty, but it doesn't actually mean anything. And so we come up with these answers. It's like we prioritize coming up with the answer and the feeling that it gets from coming up with an answer and feeling good about it, as opposed to how it actually plays out. Like, we don't even give a fuck how it plays out. It's like, I just want to feel a little bit better. I want to feel like I'm getting taken care of. I want to feel like they have my best interest in mind. Meanwhile, they don't. And meanwhile, your focus on them having your best interest in mind, thinking that they do, blinds you to what they're actually doing. They're blinding you. And a lot of them know damn well what they're doing. They're manipulating that fear. They're like, I'm going to blind you real quick, do some shit that you're not going to pay attention to because you're so focused on this other thing. And everyone does it. I'm not just saying I'm picking on Biden here just because that's a recent thing, but Trump does the same shit. Every president has always done the same shit. Every politician is doing that shit right now. There's probably thousands doing that shit right now, coming up with some bullshit because it makes people feel good to feel like, daddy's taking care of them. And then, there's no need for a follow through. So we're cutting all that shit. We don't have a set, specific, certain, guaranteed, follow this plan, follow this thing. We're recognizing how important responsibility is. It's on you. It's on your mentality. It's not on someone else. Stop looking to someone else. You can't look to someone else. If you're looking to someone else, you're trusting in them. And they, most of the time, kind of know that. And they're going to manipulate you into thinking that they're doing what's best and then take advantage of that. And then that lack of sensitivity is going to, cut you off from recognizing the actual impact that could be had from letting go of that need for certainty and control, because that's where all of our insecurity comes from anyway. And so as that mentality shifts, everything starts to shift. Society starts to shift with us because we're society. Society isn't something that happens to us or is happening around us or that we're within. You're literally society. You are it. So as you shift, society is going to shift with you.
Well said. Absolutely. And that's really all this is about, is just shifting ourselves. But we want to focus on society. Really can't focus on change. You change. A good example of that. So anybody who tuned in to last week's episode of Dualistic Unity Social, which was on Thursday, that'll be Dualistic Unity Social number 6, which was released a few days ago, will be aware of this communication that I've been getting from somebody on TikTok. And I said the account name on that episode, so I'm not going to do it on this one. But basically the gist of it, if you didn't tune into that episode, was that this person continues to write to me. And although they are encouraging to some degree, there is this overarching tone of, you're doing really well. Now, if you're ready for the next step, contact me, message me directly, follow my account, talk to me here. And what's weird about it is that even though I was like, well, just contact us through the website or Instagram or any of the platforms wherein I don't have to follow you to get your direct messages, they just wouldn't relent. They're just like, no, I can't use Instagram, and no, I don't use email. Like, it was weird. But the point is to just keep following me. And so finally, I just got tired of this promise of ascension, this promise of a gift that would provide enlightenment, and more importantly, just the ongoing messages from this person. So I blocked the account. At the end of the day, I asked them to leave me alone. They didn't. So I blocked the account. Well, silly me for thinking that was the end of it. Woke up this morning to 20 comments from another account that they had either opened or already had. And it was something along the lines of, by blocking me, you are closing the door of your evolution. You are ready to ascend. People like you should not be trapped in the reasoning of what is correct and what is not correct, as he is telling me what is correct, which is just great. What else do we got here? How can you get out of reality when you cling to a structure that only works in this reality? Not sure why he thinks I'm trying to get away from what I am. And then you're in charge of pushing others to change their way of thinking. But as soon as somebody tries it towards you, you block them. I'm not trying to push shit. I mean, that's the whole point I've been saying repeatedly. I even start my videos with, it can help to remember. Not, hey, pay attention to this. You need to learn this. This is important. This will provide you a gateway to the 5D. I don't say any of that shit because it's not true. You don't need me. You don't need anyone. You are reality. So I'm not going to message you and go, hey, you've been doing great. If you really want to move to the next level and validate me and my belief that I'm at that next fucking level, contact me. And that shit's exhausting because it's just straight up unhealthy. And they're like, oh, well, are you afraid I'll lower your vibration? It's like, no, you're just self-absorbed. Like I have options. I have the opportunity to go, that's somebody I can talk to who might actually benefit from the conversation, or somebody who's just going to take the time, spend the time to validate themselves throughout the conversation. And that's exactly how this person is addressing me. That's exactly how they're trying to enter into the conversation. And then they're like, I'm not being forceful. You're just being avoidant. I'm like, I've already told you that your messages on TikTok are unwelcome. If that's not good enough for you, that is being forceful. That's all it is. And you have a vested interest in what you're trying to achieve, which is why you're being forceful. And what you're trying to achieve is self-validation, that you have a special role in the universe, that you are here to teach people. And I know from a good long time of trying to get over that shit, you don't. Nobody needs you. Nobody needs you except you. You need you. You need your attention. You need to pay attention. You need to relax and be yourself. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with anyone else. You don't need anyone else and they don't need you. Responsibility is not as bad as it might sound.
And that recognition ties into everything, like everything that we go through, like all of the psychological suffering that we experience stems from the idea that we need someone else, right? Like we need some validation from someone else. And then if we feel like we need that, then we get afraid and concerned and worried and all of that shit if we feel like it's not happening. And they're both based on assumption. They're both just an assumption. But one of the things you said, I wanted to bring this up too because I find it so funny when say like blocking someone. Like I've gotten responses like, "Oh, why do you? Oh, you're them. Why do you have to? Why do you feel like you have to block them?" It's like, where the fuck is this rule book for recognizing yourself in other people? Like, did I miss that somewhere along the lines? Like, you're making this assumption that, oh, you've recognized that you're them, and therefore the rule is you can't block anyone. It's like, where does that come from? Why is that a thing? Maybe recognizing yourself in others requires you to block certain people. Who's to say that couldn't be in the rule book, right? And it's all of this assumption that comes with, oh, you've recognized yourself in everyone, therefore this. It's like there is no therefore this. There is no therefore you have to act in this way. Therefore, you got to do this. Oh, you've recognized yourself in them. Why do you still get mad at them? It's like they're just you. It's like who said being nice or getting mad aren't components or are components? There's no rules to that recognition. There's no therefore this. There is no recognizing yourself in others and therefore act in that way. It just changes the way that you interact with everything. It's empathy. The As Christian already said, empathy has its own action. It's its own thing. It doesn't need a rule book. It changes your perspective. But I find it so interesting because I get this all the time. Like, oh, you're them. Why are you getting frustrated? Oh, you're them. Why you're being sarcastic to them? There's nothing saying that recognizing yourself in someone else doesn't mean you can't give pushback. Doesn't mean you can't be sarcastic. Doesn't mean you can't have a funny little response to something. Doesn't mean you can't block someone if they're annoying as shit and they're just like trying to take advantage of you. Like there are no rules to this recognition, and I think that's something that before Dualistic Unity started, I definitely got caught on. I think a lot of people get caught as they start to let go of certain things or start to especially get into spirituality. There's like all these rules thinking, oh, I'm this way, I talk about this, I'm recognizing this, and therefore I have to do this. And it's that, and therefore this that isn't freedom. That is not freedom. That's just another set of guidelines. That's just another prison. That is another prison that you have to hold on to. As I was saying before, when you hold on to this idea that there's a right way to do anything, you're not paying as much attention to the thing that's happening. And so, but having a right way and a wrong way gives us that false sense of control, that sense of certainty. It's like, oh, I can point to something. I can rely on something. It's like freedom is a reliance on nothing. There's not a right way to talk about this, to have this recognition, to act after this. And even saying this recognition isn't even the thing that it is. Like the idea of the recognition isn't the recognition. It's just, and that's always the case with everything we talk about. Like anything we say is fucked. And so that's why it's important not to get too hung up on the words, but it's always important to keep that in mind. And the thing that I recognized recently that I was talking to someone with is just, and I already kind of talked about this before, but like the idea that there's a right way to have this conversation, like a right feelings to have. Oh, I'm getting caught in this. I thought I overcame this. I feel like I'm doing something wrong right now. And it's just that's being let go of. But even that, the feeling that you're doing something wrong, the feeling that you're getting caught up in something is another iteration of the infinite number of experiences that you can have. That's just as quote unquote right as letting it go. It's just another neutral experience. Like it is an experience to be had. It's just that some experiences come with certain degrees of consequences, and it's not necessary to hold on to those, but it's still equally not as wrong as letting things go, as feeling free, as feeling relaxed. Feeling tense and feeling relaxed, one isn't better than the other. They're both perfectly okay to experience. They're both components of an infinite eternal awareness having an infinite number of experiences. And it's the thought that there is one is above the other. It's that to be let go of. But again, even holding on to that isn't wrong.
It's just so funny how we get kind of twisted out of shape. Like, what is reality, and then what is what is. It's the all of everything that could be. So unity is another word that we could use to describe what is, which is really just a perception of what is, in the recognition that it's all one thing. That doesn't mean that the perception of division doesn't exist within that one thing. And I think that's where we get lost. It's like unity, lost in the perception of division, doesn't stop being unity ever, because it can't. Right? So even the most divisive mentality, wherein you are self-destructive and hurting others, is still an act within unity, because unity itself is eternal. So the idea of pain and suffering and death and fear and all of that shit, while it is a consideration for the living, existence itself has no preference. To it, it's just part of the spectrum of everything that could exist. It's really up to us whether we want to be there or go there. That's really what it is, right? So if you go out and you decide one day to be selfish, that doesn't mean that you are any less unity. It's just that you are acting from a place wherein you are not willing to recognize that you are the all of everything, that you have no need or lack, that you don't need to fulfill that petty sense of insufficiency, that you don't need to, right? You can go and buy something. You can do whatever it is you want to do. You don't need to. And that's the important part, is recognizing the freedom in that. It doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't give you any extra value or certainty. It will never change what you are. Right? Knowing that, go have some fun.
Yeah, it's never with getting caught in all of those things. There's never a shouldn't. It's never like you shouldn't do this. It's like that is okay to do. It's just there may be some consequences, but it's that idea of, oh, because of this I should do this, because of that I should do that. It's like fuck around and find out. Fuck around and find out. We say it all the time. It's like find out for yourself. As much as, doing some dumb shit and being super selfish, there's going to be consequences to that. It's like you don't know what they are until you experience them. They're not necessary. You don't have to do it. You don't need to go buy a bunch of dumb shit for yourself because you don't feel like you're worth enough without it, because that's usually where that comes from. But it's not to say that that is a wrong thing to do or that's something you shouldn't do. It's like if you feel a strong inclination to do that, go for it. We're not sitting here saying don't do that, but it's just that you don't have to. As Ray said, it's just that you don't have to do that it doesn't mean anything about you. You can think that it means something about you, but the more you invest into that, there's going to be consequences to that investment. But again, there's consequences to all of our actions, everything that we do. And to mitigate those consequences, it's not about doing the right thing. It's not about doing the good thing. It's not about being a good person or figuring out the right way to act. It's about being sensitive to the experience that you're having. Like the more sensitive you are, the less consequences you'll experience because, not paying attention to what's actually happening, getting caught in the idea of yourself, going out and doing some dumb shit in order to get validation is very similar to just like running down the street with your eyes closed. It's like it's not wrong. You don't have to, but there might be a bump. There might be some spotty ground, and you trip and fall and like skin your face on the pavement. It's like no one wants that. You can open your eyes, but opening your eyes means you have to let go of the idea of what's right and wrong, what's good and bad. Closing your eyes is like paying attention to your fucking idea of what's right or wrong or what you should or shouldn't be doing. Keeping your eyes open, that's all it is. But again, running down the street is equally as okay. Running down the street with your eyes closed is equally as okay as running down the street with your eyes open. It's just one is going to come with most likely less consequences and pain and blood.
Unless that street is made of jello. Yes. Absolutely. I just wanted to mention quickly, because we are coming to over the halfway point of this episode, that we have one ticket left for our Vancouver mini retreat, which is coming up on July 27th to July 31st. That would be a Thursday evening to a Monday morning. Basically, it's a long weekend with Andrew and myself. We're going to sit, we're going to chill out. We are going to smoke a bunch of herb. We're probably going to go and take a swim, going to go for a walk in the woods. There will be other things to do and eat, of course. But if you've ever wanted to sit down and actually just get into the thick of this conversation with Andrew and myself without a mute button in the way, without needing to be online, without having to take your turn amongst a group of other people, this is the perfect opportunity. That there are going to be 7 guests total at this event. Amanda, of course, will be there because Amanda is at every Dualistic Unity event. She is incredibly helpful. She has been instrumental in the last 2 retreats, especially just stepping up to the plate to be there for the community, as well as having just fantastic ideas. And so if you've ever wanted to meet Amanda, she's going to be there as well. But if you can join us, 1 ticket left. The QR code is on the screen right now. Secondly, or rather on another note, one more event, or one more announcement, which is that Dualistic Unity is once again in the People's Choice Podcast Awards for 2023. I'm very excited. Last year, Dualistic Unity was just getting started. I think we were on season 2 or 3 at that point. It was pretty early on, but we were in the awards and we ended up in the semifinal slate, which was really exciting, especially given when you watch the award ceremony, recognizing that Dualistic Unity really is, how do I put this? Jerry rigging this. Like we're just doing all the stuff ourselves. Like there's no production crew, there's no editors, there's no sound guy, there's nothing like that. And all of these other podcasts were pretty professional looking. We haven't really changed anything on that end. I got a better microphone, but it still kind of hums from time to time. But it's the content that matters, in our opinion. So yeah, definitely, if you can vote for us, we would really appreciate that. I'll throw the QR code on the screen here. I did so earlier. Voting is absolutely free. It takes about 2 minutes. We are in 3 categories. We are in the religion and spirituality category, which is just fucking hilarious. We are in the society category, which I think is rather appropriate. And we are in the people's choice category, which would be very appropriate considering the size of our community and our intention here on the podcast. So yeah, if you can vote for us, we'd very much appreciate it. And if not, that's fine too, because who gives a shit? It's just nice to be involved.
Yeah, it was really funny last year at the awards. We came close to winning. I forget which category. Did you say which category it was?
Religion and spirituality. We were only in 1 category last year.
Right. Yeah, so we were in the final round. We got enough votes to be in that spot and didn't end up winning. But again, that was a year ago. A lot's changed in a year. A lot's grown since then. But it was funny because we were watching it and some people in the community were watching. It was like an online live stream of the awards show, and the people who won, like they went their thank you speeches were all just like thanking these massive teams. It was so, we were both laughing like, holy shit. I mean, just the fact that we got this far is pretty impressive because it's just us doing this shit. Like there's no production crew whatsoever. It's like our cameras. I don't even have a desktop computer. Like I have a laptop camera and a microphone and like and my notebook that I keep next to me. And like that's the extent of what we have going on, and like a light in front of me usually. But that's our production, and it's whatever desk I'm at, and like was traveling for 2 months and it was just whatever. Sometimes the desk was like it couldn't even fit. It didn't have enough space for me to put my computer and my microphone in front of me. So I had to like turn the desk so it was at an angle so I could get like the long part on it. And so it's just funny. But that just goes to show, it's like goes so well with the conversation because it's just about the conversation. It's just about being free in yourself and realizing that you don't need that much in your life to be free, and actually having less can oftentimes help with that freedom. Adding more shit to your life, holding on to more stuff. Like so many people, especially I see it in Discord a lot, people talking about, getting rid of more stuff, like getting rid of more and more and more, because oftentimes the things that we hold on to are not only, we think it's direct, like has anything to do with our value, but people will hold on to things attaching to an idea, like that nostalgic feeling. And I can be nostalgic about certain things, but as you start to let go of the idea that you are an idea, it's like those things don't mean as much anymore. And it's funny, the reflection of our internal mental clutter and our external clutter in our environment, and just all the shit we hold on to and all the things we point to, like, oh, I mean something because I own this. Oh, I mean something and I have more value because I own all that stuff. And as that recognition starts to become clearer, that you don't gain value, you don't attain value, you don't have value, but you are inherently value. You are whole and complete exactly as you are. There is nothing that can change that. There's nothing that can add to it. There's nothing that can take away from it. And that's the state of freedom. That's the experience of freedom. And so it just doesn't make as much sense to hold on to a bunch of shit, pointing to it, thinking that it means something about you. And so it naturally, things start to fall away. But even with that, a lot of times people will get attached to the idea that they should, another should, get rid of things. I need to prove that I'm feeling freer in myself. So I need to get rid of all this clutter, get rid of all this stuff. Again, no right or wrong. If you want to get rid of it, sure. If you want to do things that are more of an expression of that freedom, absolutely. But it's the attachment to thinking that I'm going to be more free from getting rid of this. Oh, I can't be quite as free with all this stuff, because it's not about the things, it's about our attachment to the things. It's about how attached we think our value is to the things that we own. You can still own shit, and if if you can recognize that it doesn't mean anything about your value, it's like you don't necessarily have to get rid of it, but you also don't have to keep it. Maybe you can, donate it or something. Just find a better use for it because you're whole and complete in yourself. But even the idea, it's like that's another thing we like to attach to. Oh, by doing this, I'm going to become more free. That's still buying into the illusion that you can become more free. You can have the experience of feeling more free, but there's nothing you do in your environment, in the experience that you're having, that makes you more free. It's inherent to what you are.
Which ties into a question here earlier. Are babies closer to the divine, and what can we learn from them? No, they're not. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no way to be closer to the divine. We're all the divine, right? It's just the perception of division that is the difference. That's really all it is. I mean, if there's anything we can learn from babies, it would be vulnerability, because that is the the challenge that they are assigned upon entering this experience. Like, that's the whole thing. When we're born, we have really no control. we are completely vulnerable and at the whim of whatever it is we're experiencing, which is one of the reasons it's so terrifying and intense. And we have no experience in this. We have no context. We have no understanding. We have nothing. And we come into the world with a body that barely moves, and we can't even figure out how to blow our own nose. Like, it's really quite sad when you look at a baby and you're like, Jesus, you have a long way to go. And there's no judgment there, but we do. And that's really the only thing that has changed is the fact that they're in a state of uncertainty and have no way of dealing with it whatsoever. We grow up out of that state, start developing the illusion of control and the ability to influence to a greater degree. And then we actually get lost in the perception that we have control and that we are separate. And so we just leave the awareness of uncertain vulnerability because it's terrifying, not recognizing that we are building a greater and greater ability to adapt to that uncertainty all the time. It's just that we get lost in the idea of control as a means of doing so. Got to have control to have influence. It's like you always have influence. The bigger you get, the easier it gets to become more influential, right? Like, this is the thing about little kids. We don't even recognize it after we've grown up, but they're looking up at everyone. You feel kind of small in that case because you need help with things. You need people to come and give you a hand carrying things or going somewhere or meeting someone. Like, there's so much in terms of vulnerability and helplessness that goes with being a kid, right? And getting older, again, it's just the illusion of control, the illusion of identity, all that stuff. It just gets out of hand when we could actually just be like children, as good old JC was saying, right? Like, all you have to do is just relax, just let go, be uncertain, and in doing so, you can definitely tell that life isn't what we necessarily think it is. We take it very seriously, right? And things are not always what they appear to be. And that's very much the case, is that things aren't what they appear to be. Don't get caught making assumptions of what you think you see in terms of reality, because things can be very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that plays into that process of ego development. We get caught in thinking, and just to that question, the divine, like babies being closer to the divine, that's based on the assumption that the divine is something, like, is a conceptual idea that we're closer or further from, that it's something that's at all separate from us. And so that process, that state of ego development, it's like, yeah, there's the experience of just being rawly authentic and vulnerable, but also not being able to help yourself at all when you're a baby growing up into a child. And then we develop ways to help ourselves, develop an idea of how we fit into reality and how things are. And we always think things are exactly how I think they are. And we base this assumption, like, we come to this conclusion and have this assumption throughout most of our life. And then we have maintained the idea that our perspective of reality, our perception of reality, is reality. It never is. It never is. And I think that's the benefit of things like psychedelics, for example, is they just shake you enough to realize, like, oh, it's not what I think. Oh, this isn't really what I think. It's not saying that it is a specific thing. And I think that's where people can get caught in thinking, oh, this is, especially with, just from what I've heard, what we've chatted about DMT. I've never tried it, but people will get caught in thinking, like, coming up with all these stories and, oh, all of this is happening. It's like, no, it's just shaking you to show you that this thing that you think it is isn't what it is. And that includes the story you're now attaching to. This new story that you're attaching to also isn't it. And so as we develop, the beauty of this conversation is it's the recognition that, we don't have to act as babies. We can still be self-sufficient, but with the same freedom and authenticity and vulnerability as babies have, and kind of take what we can learn from children and babies, but we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater as we grow up. We're like, oh, I'm starting to get this state of certainty. Oh, I can't be vulnerable anymore. I'm an adult now. I can't be childlike. I can't be authentic. I can't be myself. I got to be this because I got to fit in, because I got it. This is where my value comes from. What do you mean? How could I possibly be that? And so the beauty of this and the process of ego development is that it's like finding a degree of false certainty through your teenage years that allows you to kind of, I don't know, just get a wherewithal of what's going on. But then we get caught on that, and then we think, like, oh, that's it. it's not recognizing, oh, I've learned a lot of things. I understand more. I've had more experiences, but that thing that I attached to help myself climb out of, that raw experience of just being reality as a baby, as a child, that that is something that can still be experienced along with all of these recognitions. And we don't have to get rid of one in order to attain the other. It's like, no, you've experienced a lot. You've understood a lot. You don't have to maintain this idea of what's going on all the time. You can just be it because you are it. And that idea that you've held on to, that perception of yourself that allowed you to find some stability in a very, very inherently uncertain reality isn't the reality of you. It's just a tool. It's just a little bitty tool that you can utilize, but it's not it. It's not the answer. It's not the end of the road. Like becoming 25, 30, 35, like that's not the end of the road. Being even 18, once you quote unquote become an adult, it doesn't mean that things stop. It doesn't mean that things stop processing. So it's important to recognize that there's a lot of steps after steps 3, 4 of ego development. There's way more, and we've just settled upon those because we've made the assumption that those are it, and this is who I am. This is what I am, and I feel at least a tiny bit of comfort in this, despite a fuckload of suffering along with it. And you can't tell me otherwise because this is my belief, and let me believe what I want to believe, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, you can do that. Again, nothing wrong with that, but you don't have to.
Absolutely. This is a good question, and I appreciate it, by the way. Welcome to the conversation. Are you guys pantheists? I'm new. Okay, so here's the thing: is that I'm going to give an answer, but that answer is not, in fact, the answer. It's describing kind of the state of mind that we're more or less talking about, but it is not the state of mind we're talking about. It's just the only way to talk about it. It's through divisive concepts. And so if I was going to say anything, I would say it's kind of a mix between pantheism and solipsism. So yes, the universe is God, but you're God. So the universe is you. And the perception that you are divided from the universe, that your awareness is not just the universe, in fact, acting through you in a specific form and function, is just exacerbated by your idea that your self-image is the truth, that the thoughts that you have about yourself are in fact who you are. Because that illusion that who you think you are is who you are requires you to have a perspective that thing is divided from everything else. So you see, if you have a concept of you, it necessitates the concept of a reality separate from you. And the more you are committed to the concept of you being reality, the farther you get from the recognition that you are reality itself. It's not about a belief. It's not about a philosophy. This is not about memorizing concepts. It's not about any of that. It's about the ongoing act of surrender to what you are here and now by questioning all of the things that you assume you are and think you are for the sake of false certainty or for establishing some fictitious sense of value in comparison to assumptions about other things. That's all it is. I say that's all it is, but there was a lot there. If you are interested in this, go back to episode 1 of the Dualistic Unity podcast. Season 1, episode 1, it's called Scratching the Surface. All of season 1 gets into a lot of this in detail. It's really not, it's not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's not a spirituality. You don't need to believe anything. All you need to do is just be yourself, which is really the point, is how often are you being yourself, or how often are you trying to be what you think you should be or what you think you are, which is not yourself.
Yeah, well said. That was a fantastic summary of everything that we're talking about. But again, there's a lot there. That's the beauty of having the podcast. Like, go back to season 1, episode 1, episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it'll start unraveling quite a bit, because really seasons 1 and 2 cover a ton of this conversation. And it was so funny how well it played out, despite it just being me being super curious, having a shitload of questions, and Ray not having talked to someone about it for a while and just being willing to have a chat and not give me answers, but just give me more to think about than what I was thinking about. It's like I came in with, a perspective like this. And every time I was curious about some of the edges, it was just like more to think about, more to think about, more to think about, more to think about. But it wasn't like, I was here and Ray was saying, well, this is the answer. So like, let's get you here. It's not that at all. There are no answers given. It's just a continued opening of letting go of assumptions, continuing to remain curious about this. It's the process. It's just the process of not settling on an answer and where the fuck that goes. Like, so many people just want to settle on an answer. They want to figure out, what's the meaning of life? What is this all about? It's like, what the fuck do you mean? Your life. So it's you. There is no life to figure out or find the meaning of. It's just you in process. That's all it is. There is no endpoint. There is no answer. There is no spot where you have it figured out. It's what you are, which is never what you think. So it's always that processing. And I think the way we can say it best is that like pantheism, solipsism kind of combo, but it's not that, because it really, like, all of this comes down to you. And as Ray said, like, your self-concept, like, as long as you're maintaining a conceptual idea of yourself that you believe to be the truth, that you think your values derive from, that how you perceive that idea has a certain degree of value, and when things change, your value changes. As long as you're maintaining that, there's going to be the perception of division taken as truth. If you believe that that's the truth, and your assumption about where your value lies, which is always just assumption, you're going to have the assumption that there's something separate from you. So as that begins to get questioned more and more, you start to recognize more and more, oh, that's not really what I am. I'm never what I think that I am. It means nothing is ever what you think it is. Your idea of me isn't what I am. Whatever you think Ray is isn't what he is. It's just your idea that you're maintaining inside of your head. And so as you start to let go of those, as you start to recognize that, oh yeah, at first it can be a little bit uncomfortable to realize that you can't actually conceptually know anyone or anything, or that any of the ideas that you hold on to aren't the things themselves, you start to feel a little bit freer. You start to realize, like, oh, this psychological suffering I'm going through is just me trying to find certainty. It's me settling upon an answer, or wanting to so badly. Like, there's such a deep desire to settle upon an answer, settle upon a certainty, that we just do it despite having very little evidence of it. We're like, I just want an answer so bad, so I'm going to make one up and then settle upon it. And anyone who questions it, I'm going to tell them they're being disrespectful. And like, that's where we're at. It's like such childlike behavior. It's incredible. We just want certainty so bad that we make it up. But it doesn't mean that it exists. And it's like that example of running down the street, and you're like, I really, keeping your eyes open, and you're like, fuck, I really want certainty. Certainty. Close your eyes, stumble, fall. Maybe you run another couple steps because you were able to see a couple feet in front of you, but eventually you're going to stumble and fall. You can maintain your eyes closed running down the street to a degree, but as things shift, as things change, as your environment changes, because it's not an empty street, there's other people walking around. There's things going on. There's cars driving by. You're going to get hit by something. And the best way to mitigate that is by maintaining that awareness, by keeping your eyes open, which means that you can't settle upon an answer in order to maintain that. And that's what this conversation is. It's just a continued conversation without settling upon an answer and finding out where the fuck that goes.
Exactly. And the podcast is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the conversation itself. It's funny. I often laugh about this simple fact that if anybody has been enjoying the podcast from the beginning, since episode 1, and you've gone through season 1 and season 2, and you've been like, wow, this conversation really progressed very well, I encourage you to join us on Patreon. We have had a Patreon account since, I think, the second month of Dualistic Unity coming into being. And ever since, we've been doing group conversations. At first, it was just once per week. Now it's 5 days per week. But all of the videos of those conversations that happened in between the podcast episodes, of us talking to the very first community members week by week, having 2, maybe 3 people in the group for 1 month or 2 months, and then all of a sudden 4 or 5 people in the next month, things like that. Those conversations where we're just going back and forth. We're not recording. It's not ever going to be in the public light. We're talking to people about stuff that they're going through. That's really, I would say, like, where so much of the value in Dualistic Unity really is. Like, if you are listening to the podcast and you haven't yet jumped on Patreon, I really recommend you do. And the reason is simply because there's so much content on there. There's over 500 hours of group video, of group discussions, of people very much going through the same shit that you're going through, describing it in different ways, from different perspectives and different lives and different experiences. So you can see how universal these fucking insights really are when you break it down. It's not about what you're going through, it's about how you can apply some of this stuff to what you're going through. And that's not very difficult at all. It's just practice, right? And relaxing into it. So if you haven't jumped on Patreon, I'm going to throw a QR code here on the screen. There is a 7-day free trial, which means that you don't even have to continue on after those 7 days. It's worth it just to jump on for a week, chat with Andrew and I any one of the 5 days in that week that we run group discussions. We have one right after this in about 25 minutes. We're going to be having a tier 2 discussion. The details are already posted on Patreon. It happens through Zoom, so you can be on the screen with us. You can chat with us. People raise their hand if they want to share a story or ask a question. There's a chat section, so you don't even have to be on the screen if you're not comfortable. But the power in all of this is you. It's you. It's not the podcast. It's you. And so if you want to help this continue to grow, join us. Be part of the group. Be part of the discussion. Go to dualisticunity.com. Click on the community button. Join us on our free Discord because it is free. You can join our Discord. It does not matter how you can join this discussion, but if you're already talking to yourself about this, you are having the discussion. Talking to other people is still just talking to yourself. And that's the practice, is recognizing that all of your fear about talking to other people is still your fear about just talking to yourself. And so come be vulnerable with us. Be yourself. Help us grow, because that's all that your presence will really do, is make this move along faster, easier, and better. We're all in this together because we're all you.
And the beauty in that is you're being yourself right now, as are we. And so come join us in being yourself. It's there's such a beauty in that recognition that you're already doing it. You're not getting on here for us to tell you something, for us to convince you of something, for us to go through a fucking PowerPoint, be like, how to be yourself. Do this, do that. Step 1, step 2, step 3. It's never that. It's just a conversation, because it's about you. It's always just about you. It's not about convincing anyone else of what this is. Like, the priority has to be you and your experience. And as that gets clearer, as it does become that priority, it's like your cup starts overflowing. And then it's not about helping people in order to feel better or gain validation. It just makes sense. Like, fuck, I got some extra water overflowing this cup. Got to do something. Might as well do something with it. Right. But so many people are coming from the mentality of, my cup isn't full. I got to help people in order to fill my cup, in order to feel better about it. It just makes sense to interact with people going through things. And that's the beauty of the conversations on Patreon. Like, we never pitch it as, like, group therapy sessions or anything like that, but it ends up playing out like that because it's just people connecting with each other. Like, there's so many times that someone's going through something, and then it won't even be me or Ray who responds immediately. It's someone else in the group who's going through something very similar. They're like, oh, I was going through that a couple weeks ago, feeling better now. Here's some things that helped me, or even just, oh, I'm going through that too. Yeah, I don't have an answer for you, but you're not alone in it. And that's the beauty, is just that connection, is just that recognition. Because a lot of times we feel so alone in our experience that we feel like we're the only one going through certain things. And especially in a society that we currently have, that we currently are, with a lot of people trying to cling to false certainties. It's like everyone will give you an answer. They're like, oh, you're feeling this way? Just do this. Just go to church. Just work out. Just think happy thoughts. And everyone wants to give you an answer because that's the shit they're holding on to themselves, because they're clinging to that so tightly. And they're like, this is my answer, despite continuing to suffer at the hands of that answer they keep holding on to, because that's not it. It's never it. The answer is never it. You are it. You're always it. You're the answer all the time. So any answer that you're holding on to is cutting down on the empowerment that you can feel when you recognize that there isn't an answer outside of you. And so we're not going to sit here giving you an answer, but we'll offer perspectives, we'll empathize plenty. We'll probably, it's been a number of times where I've been the one going through the most shit and talking about that. And Ray's going through shit all the time. So it's a bunch of people just going through things together, talking about it, not feeling like they have to hide in the corner and hide their experience, hide the shit they're going through. Because when they talk to other people about it, the other people are like, no, don't bring that shit in here. I don't want that negative energy. I don't want, this is a good vibes only club. It's like, what the fuck are you afraid of? You sound so insecure coming with that mentality of, oh, I don't hang with negative people. It's like, you must have a very, very small image of yourself if you can only handle positive people. Sounds like a very, very fragile way of living.
Yeah, I would say. And another thing to remember, because you can't help it. If you're watching this video and you haven't met us in person and you haven't talked to us face to face, then chances are you have an image of us. You have an idea of who we are, very much like the person I was talking about on TikTok. Like I'm amazed that you're turning down this offer of a gift to help you reach your ascension. It's like, I'm amazed that you have an idea that I would. I'm amazed that you've taken all of the content that I've created this entire time and somehow turned that into Ray needs to ascend to 5D and leave this reality. It's fucking weird. The point is that we always form images of other people based on what we want to be ourselves. And so if there's an idea of enlightenment that you have and you're listening to Andrew and myself, or just Andrew, doesn't even matter, and Andrew is saying things that resonate with you and you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to be. It's very easy to fall into the idea that Andrew is that thing that you're envisioning rather than just being exactly what you are, saying things that you have access to, because you do right now. It's just about getting the idea out of the way. And so a good way to start with that is to join us on Patreon. The best way to really just crush that shit is to come to a retreat, to come meet us in person. As I said, there's one ticket left for Vancouver. There is one ticket left for Vermont. There are a number of tickets left for the Netherlands. And I just want to say, like Andy was saying, like, we're not really going to give you answers. We might, ask you some questions. I'm just going to straight up frustrate you most of the time. And it's just because I refuse to abide by this stupid idea of enlightenment or unity or any of that shit. It's just an idea. The reality is not the idea. You are already the answer. You don't have to try and be anything. So the best thing that we can do for you or anybody else is to not do anything for you or anyone else, but to do it because we're interacting with ourselves, and that is important. Because that is important. It's just difficult to see how important it is when you're wrapped up in the idea of yourself, which necessitates the fiction of others.
Yeah, absolutely. The best thing anyone can do for anyone is just be themselves, is just share that experience of freedom, because they're not coming into the conversation with weight. They're being free in themselves. And that's all this is just doing it on your own, for you, alone, together. And that's the beauty of everything that's going on with all the groups and all the conversations and the retreats and everything. And so, yeah, this has been a fun chat. I wanted to show you a book that just came in the mail for me. Oh, can you see that? Yeah, got it. So I'm excited to dig into that.
That book.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited to read. I'll probably get in some of that this afternoon. And dude, I have not read a book in a long time. And
well, that's a good one then.
Yeah,
for
so
sure. And I think the
that.
thing about that book, and I'm going to leave on this note because it is my favorite part of that book, is that nobody dies of old age. People die of very small illnesses that beat them because of their frailty over time, but nobody dies of old age itself.
Yeah, that's you mentioned that, and that was the draw for me, was just to figure out what he talks about in there in regards to that, because it's incredible, like the mind and the body are not disconnected. There is no separate mind to the body. It is interconnected, and this isn't what we think. So our assumptions of what this experience is, even of the human experience, are just assumptions, because we'd rather settle upon that than recognize that maybe we don't know what the human experience is all about.
Exactly. And then after you finish that book, we should invite Deepak onto the show, because that would be a great conversation. That book came out in the 90s. I wonder how often people even bring it up with him, because it's brilliant. That one and How to Know God, another really good book, although it eventually gets to the end and you're like, hold up, there was more there. But that's what we cover here on Dualistic Unity, which is a great reason to have him on the show. We're going to wrap this up here, everyone. If you can, join us on Patreon, patreon.com/Dualistic Unity. And if not, we will see you back tomorrow morning, 11:30 Eastern time, for another episode of Dualistic Unity Raw.
Bye, everyone.